How many people, if you're under 25, hold your hands up. Oh, cool. Good. You guys aren't totally brain dead yet. It's getting late, though. You know, it's your time is running short. I guess I should start by explaining the title of this talk, Beyond Adultery. I'm talking about adultery in the terms of becoming an adult. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not grow up. A grown-up, grown is the past participle of grow, someone who is no longer growing. And the very idea of adulthood is problematic, because I think there's something, I don't think I know, there's something beyond sexual maturity. There's another stage of development that is quite natural for human beings, but it's repressed in almost all cultures because of this idea of adulthood, that somehow, you know, you reach this point and that's it. You know, now I'm an adult and the rest of my life is just working out this adult thing. And if something really momentous starts to shift in you, we usually repress that. And what's called enlightenment, awakening, all that stuff, I see really as just a sort of normal, what I call epistemological maturity. It's an understanding about the nature of language and who we are and how we think and the relationship between the languages that we use, the way we talk, and our experience. And actually, there's one thing I'm going to repeat here a bunch of times tonight, and I'll start right now. The voice in your head is not something you are doing. It's something that's happening to you. You have been hijacked, really, by your language machine. The voice is generated by a bunch of very complex structures in your brain that amounts to a language machine, and its job is to take all of the data that's coming in through my senses and make a story out of it so that we can feel good. You know, we know what's going on. The problem is that we think that our story, the way we think about the world, isn't just our story, but it's the way the world really is. And that error is so fundamental. It's such a basic misunderstanding of the nature of language. The fact that we believe everything we hear ourselves say because we think we said it is a kind of insanity that the whole species is infected with now. But I think what we are verging on a time when that's about to end. There's a technology of consciousness that's emerging. It's been emerging over the last couple centuries, but particularly in the last 50 years. And in the next 30 or 40 years, I expect it to come to some sort of maturity. If you think about trying to talk about electricity in the year 1800, it was very difficult. There was no language for it. There was, you know, folk knowledge of rubbing things together, or, you know, certain metals when you touched would do things, and they had some experience with what we now call electricity, but it was more like magic than it was a technology. But it took 200 years. Well, from 1800 to now, here we sit in this auditorium with all these lights and our computers and everything. But that was just absolutely unimaginable in 1800. What their job, the scientists, the people in 1800 who knew there was something important there, their first job was to invent new language, new words that make sense, because the words they had, the ones they inherited, were basically useless for tapping the power of electricity. But over 200 years, thousands of individual people from around the planet who are doing their little experiments and writing them up and making up new language all along the way, a new way of thinking about this stuff began to emerge, and you can see the results of it. what I'm suggesting is that we are on the verge of a technology of consciousness that is probably 30 to 50 years out, but it's in all of your lives. It may come sooner than that, but I don't, who knows. But what we've learned about the brain and, well, the whole thing in cognitive science, I mean, there aren't any theories now that nobody's in agreement about anything. The whole thing is just up in the air. It's a time of immense change and growth and new learning, and nobody's actually begun to really integrate it yet. But that's going to happen. With the power of computers and with all the people doing these studies, increasingly there's going to be a technology of consciousness. And that a lot of the stuff, in fact, I would say all of the stuff that we worry about, the stuff we go to shrinks or pastors or to talk about, or our friends, and the problems we have in our life with our friends and with everything else that bugs us, most of that stuff is completely unnecessary and useless. It's created by the fact that we're telling ourselves stories that are so out of touch with what's actually going on in the world that it just gets us more and more screwed up. But we're beginning to wake up from that. And now I need to look at my notes. I'm really sort of excited, well, beyond sort of excited, I'm quite excited to be here. I used to do a lot of public speaking, but I haven't done any in like 5 years, and so this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to some people. And such a young group is so inspiring because you are the guys that are going to create this new world. And what you have to do is free yourselves from the old concepts that have been programmed into you by your school, the media, your parents, your friends, everything else. You've all got a story in your head. That voice that talks to you, everything that happens to you, you can take it and fit it in somewhere in your story and make sense out of it. But that story is not the way the world is. It's just the story you've been sold. And most of it, I'm trying to find a good word that I can say. Well, in any case, most of it is useless and wrong even. So anyway, what I decided to do here is that 18 minutes is not even enough time to begin some little subsection of this topic. So what I'm going to do is sort of throw out some bullet points, some things for you to think about, and then I'd like to, if anybody has any questions or get into some kind of dialogue about things, because it won't take me long to make these bullet points. They're pretty simple, but they're profound, and I'm hoping you'll be able to fill in the spaces between these points and see how they relate together, because like I said, there's just not enough time for me to paint the picture and draw all the connections and all of that. So let me take a look at some of these points here. Well, I'll repeat it one more time. The voice in your head is not something you are doing. Actually, I hope you're going to remember this by the end, because I'm going to say this several times. The voice in your head is not something you are doing. It's something that's happening to you, like your heartbeat, in a sense. I mean, you can learn to get that under control, but that's automatic. It's not, and, well, in any case, I've said that, so I'll say it many times. We have a language machine. Most of us are trained from infancy to identify with that voice, to think, that's me, I said that, I think that, when it's just a function of your brain that automatically takes whatever is happening and builds a story. And for us, we build that story in English. Most of us, some of us have several languages, and that can be very helpful, because then you can bounce them off each other. And anyone who's bilingual knows very well that thinking in one language is a whole different universe than thinking in another language. And that gives you a really distinct advantage, because you're not quite so attached to one of the stories. You know there are at least two. And most people only have one story. If they only speak one language, they've got one story. So, Anyway, so some of the points I want to make. I want to put some historical perspective on this. How many people here have heard of punctuated equilibrium? If you raise your hand. Okay, not many. Good. That means I can explain it. When I went to school, and when you guys now even, when you're taught evolution, the idea is that evolution takes millions of years of this slow adaptive change that takes place, you know, and all, you know, it just slowly, gradually changes into a new species. The problem with that is the fossil record doesn't support that, and the creationists have jumped on that for 100 years, saying, well, where are all these intermediates? There are some intermediates, but not many. And back in the early 70s, Stephen Gould and Niles Eldredge wrote a paper called Punctuated Equilibrium, in which they explained why there are no intermediate species, that evolution is not a slow, gradual process. It is basically long periods of stasis. Well, I have to back up a second. Evolution doesn't operate on individuals or even species. Evolution operates on ecosystems. You can't talk about some part of an ecosystem undergoing change unless there's some other stuff going on that's causing it. It all works together. And what Eldredge and Gould came to realize was that actually evolution happens quickly. There are long periods of stasis where these ecosystems stay, you know, they have waves, they move up and down a little bit, but they're pretty much the same until something happens, nobody knows what, some parameter gets pushed too far, whatever, and the whole system goes into chaos. New species emerge, old species die off, and then it reaches a new stability and it stays stable again for millions of years. Okay? And the time period for this, instead of millions of years, is between, well, it depends on the species and the life cycle time, but between hundreds and maybe 20 to 50,000 years, 50 at the outside. But these things happen really fast in geological time. When you're talking about a 4.7 billion year old planet, 50,000 years is like that. It's nothing. And it's just so obvious that we are now living in one of those punctuations. And it began, well, you can draw different points, but probably it began somewhere between, say, 30,000 years ago. You can go back and see the cave paintings in France and all that, and you can say there's clearly something going on here that's different. You can go back further, you can bring it up closer, but in any case, even if it's as much as 30,000 years, that's so within the range of punctuated equilibrium, and it's accelerating. The change, and some people have called this well, there's been a number of names calling it the Noazenic era, that it's actually a new era of Earth's development that we are approaching. My sense is this is going to culminate in the next 30 to 50 years, in the lifetime of most of the people here. We are going to see basically the end of civilization as we know it, and the beginning of something entirely different, the first global, high-tech, enlightened civilization. One of the things that has to happen for us to do that is we need to wake up from the trance of language forever. See, language is usually thought of as primarily a communication tool. I don't think that's true. I think that language is primarily a navigation tool. It's a tool that all animals possess, even mosquitoes. It's a way for them to experience their experience, whatever is going on, and sort of chunk it into meaningful units. You ever see a bug walking around? Oh, I see, that's it. I can't talk here. Okay. It started with me. I started wondering, how does a bug know where it's going? You ever see bugs walking around in your backyard? You know, and they look like they know where they're going. You know, they got a home somewhere. How the hell do they even find it with a brain the size of a bug? Well, they do. They have some sort of internal mapping mechanism that allows them to negotiate their environment and survive. That is the basis of language, is taking sense data and chunking it into meaningful units. And that may be related to Chomsky's deep structure stuff, if there are any linguists here. But the point is, well, what is the point here? These are bullet points, so I can't really go in too much on this. Well, let's just go on. That's enough to provoke some questions in the meantime. Oh yeah, this idea of something beyond sexual maturity. I think this is absolutely crucial. Everybody, almost everybody, really thinks it's over by the time they're 25. You know, this is it. Now it's just sort of filling in the blanks, and the idea that there's a momentous transformation that's, I mean, think about, well, we've sort of eased the transition into sexuality, and we accept that. We look forward to it as children. Or I don't know if we look forward to it, but we know about it, and we know it's coming. And when the changes in sexual maturity appear, we're ready for it. But we are programmed to stop after that. What people call enlightenment or awakening, all these things, these Buddhist words that float around so easily these days, they're steeped in all this mystical, you know, woo stuff, you know. And my sense is it's not that way at all. It's really this epistemological maturity. It's really just waking up to the fact that the voice in my head is not me. It's something happening to me, and it's up to me to take responsibility for that. I just got the light for 2 minutes, so I want to hear something from somebody who's got a question or a challenge or anything. Please, come on, help me. I didn't get to, well, I knew I wouldn't get to most of the stuff I wanted to get to, but who's got a question? Come on. Ah, good.
I'm 61. I wish I was 25 again. But I have a nephew that's mentally ill, and he's your voice.
Yeah, yeah.
So you talk about that.
Yeah.
And I know so what is that explanation?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. There's a book by a guy named Julian James called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Long title. But he talks about that the ancient, when you read like the ancient Greek texts, people didn't make decisions. Their gods made decisions. They had voices. They heard voices. It's a new thing. It's what I call Adam's error, is that Adam was, you know, if you accept or think about that story, the first man, he was the first guy who realized the voice in his head was, or came to the idea that the voice in his head was him. Everyone else thought it was the tree spirits or the ancestors or the king or something like that. But there are still some people who hear those voices as something other and then give it great authority. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Voice. You say that the breakthrough is when you start questioning the voice and challenging it, or being at least, I guess, aware of where it is.
Right. To me, it's really like breaking the identification with it. It's getting that it's something other. It's not me. It just happens. I have no idea how I do this. I come up here, I start flapping my jaw. I don't even flap my jaw. It just all happens. My language machine takes care of it. It's way too complex to control my diaphragm and my lips and all these muscles and to try to do what I'm doing. It's all handled by a bunch of automatic routines that are in my language machine. And so the big deal is to start questioning it when you hear yourself, especially if you hear when you're upset, if your language machine is going off, and is to just stop from that. Just stop and go, what the hell is that? You know, where did that come from? And the more you watch that stuff, the more you begin to notice it. And the more you get, and you see it in other people. You push the wrong button, and it goes off. You know?
So how do you challenge that? You know it's
Well, you just pay attention to it. You notice it. You study it like a scientist. I would say keep a journal. start taking notes, observe what it's saying, watch what it says, see whether it's helpful or not. A lot of it is just really self-deprecating crap that we beat ourselves up with. It's just all automatic routines that run over and over and over again. The problem is we're identified with it. We think, I said that. I must feel this. Nonsense. It's just bad programming. Yeah. I just don't find the word subconscious useful. It's certainly not conscious, though. Subconscious gives the impression that there's something that we actually know. Oh, the subconscious. Yeah. What?
Yeah, so if your invoice is coming out and it's not subconscious.
If you're, I'm saying everything that comes out of your mouth, including what you just said and everything I've said, is being generated by your language machine. We do have some ability to program the language machine. That's not easy to do for an adult. That's why there's some hope for you guys. Although anybody can do it. You can reprogram your language machine to change those patterns. But for anybody over 25, it takes a commitment, some persistence, and some work.
By the age of 25?
Well, it's probably younger than that. I used to say 18, but I don't want to make everybody feel bad all the time. The thing is, the older you are, the more fixed it is and the more difficult it is. You know, ideally, it would be to raise children before the age of puberty. That's really the cutoff point. If you can get children to understand that the voice in their head is just their language machine and something they're responsible for, then they've got it, you know. They won't have that problem. Yeah.
So what is the goal? Is the goal to achieve freedom and peace?
The goal for me is to create a new planet. I didn't get to that. We are on the verge of literally creating paradise here, I think. At least we've got that opportunity, and to establish a civilization, a global, high-tech, enlightened civilization that could last 1,000,000 years. But language monkeys like us will never do that. Jack's just... Thanks for the opportunity.
Fascinating stuff, Heron. Fascinating stuff.